What do you mean smart consultants, like technology consultants or
Well, yeah,
or just external ones?
they're consulting to the mining business for us to apply for a mining license. So to do that, we have to um, undertake a lot of studies in the field, ecological studies, different, dust, air, sound. And we also need to deal with our native title friends.
What's that like these days?
Look, personally, I don't see it as a real issue. I believe we need to treat them properly, and that's the way that I'm going about it. I'm not arguing at all. I'm just sort of trying to come to an agreement on the sort of compensation we can give them.
What are the kind of like conversations that go on that are different to that of just saying, hey, how can we kind of have a compromise and give you good reimbursement?
Well, I can't really imagine what other people would do, but I feel the right way to do it is to, obviously realise that we're actually new to the area compared to these people that go back a long time in history, and try to understand what they see in the area and make sure that we are careful with anything that they think is part of their history.
Yeah, okay. What kind of things have come up so far that are part of their history? So I'll just turn my phone off.
Yeah, I think so far we've just come across items that could have been stone chips that could have been some sort of a utensil, and when we come up with this sort of stuff, we just have to make sure that we exclude that area from the survey that we're doing.
Yeah, okay. And in terms of, so let me just introduce you. We have the CEO of Lodestone Mines, and your name is Robert Williamson.
That's correct.
And shout outs to Ian Plimer for giving your contact details and assisting organise this. You're a good man. So this is What's Your Voyage. Essentially what we do, we sit down, we have a conversation about the journey of your life and, go down all the rabbit holes of the type of knowledge that you have, and we just have a chit chat.
No problem.
Yeah, beauty. So in terms of like, how do you even go about choosing what, like the zone of Lodestone Mines? Like, how do you find the zone? And
well, we're after magnetite iron ore, and because it's magnetic, it occurs in the ground, and you can find it through aeromagnetic surveys. So we
like a plane just goes over.
That's correct. Yeah, and the government actually did that quite a while ago, and so we've just been able to apply for tenements in areas that are showing anomalies.
Tenements being
well, these are exploration tenements that are that you are given, where you apply for, and are given by the government under an exploration lease agreement.
Yeah, okay. And first, why are you looking for that type of mineral? Like, what's the utility of it?
Well, the area that we're in is an ancient seabed, and in that seabed, this siltstone formed, which had an iron content, and in different areas the iron content is different values. In the area that we have our tenements, the iron content is a commercial grade from which we can undertake our feasibility studies and eventually establish a mine to mine it.
How's it defined if it's commercial grade or not? Like, what's the characteristics you need?
Well, to be commercial, you need to have a decent in situ grade that the cost of extracting it, processing it, still has a profit level.
Yeah. Okay. Fair. Pretty standard, eh?
Yeah.
All right. Cool. And what is that used for? So do you melt it down, you refine it?
Oh, this is the ingredient for steel.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And is it like, is what other ingredients are part of that supply chain?
Basically, to make steel, you need iron, which is what this is, and carbon. To make it, we would be mining this and creating a concentrate, and that concentrate would be sold to a steel mill where they would pelletize it, and then the pelletizing would go into a steel furnace and be reduced down into steel.
Yeah, okay. And is this refining into pellets done in Australia, or do you?
Well, we'd love it to be done in Australia, but there have been some attempts to do it. There is a little bit of the manufacturer of pellets in Whyalla.
Is that with Sunjiv's
Yes.
big plans?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. How are we on those plans? Where are they at?
We have nothing to do with that company, but they seem to be successfully mining their iron ore and turning it into steel.
Yeah, okay, that's good. And do they open it up to other companies like yours, or?
I'm sure that if we wanted to, we could have an agreement with them around supplying them with feedstock for their steel mills.
Yeah, okay, cool. And so when did Lodestone Mines commence?
Well, Lodestone in different forms has been around for over 10 years. One of my business partners, Gordon Toll, is the major shareholder, and he was the person who undertook to apply for all these tenements. Gordon and I have worked together before on other projects, but we've come into this project together, and we want to see this project through to actual production.
Yeah, cool. And how did you get into the mining industry?
I was born in Broken Hill.
Yep.
So yeah, you can't sort of get away from mining if you're born in Broken Hill. I went to school, ended up on the mines in Broken Hill as an apprentice, and then followed different mining companies and worked for them and worked my way up from a tradesman through to an engineer, and then eventually you take that pathway from the technical into the strategy and become a director.
Yeah, okay. And how long was that process in each stage?
Well, I've been a director now, I suppose, for nearly 5 years, but prior to that, most probably 30 odd years as an engineer. I worked over in the West. My actual core competency is robotics.
Real?
Yeah.
How did you work? What kind of robotics did you work with or create?
Well, when you are looking after a very large production iron ore mine, you need to be able to assay as you're producing, or it's going across a conveyor belt, and the greater sample that you can handle, the more accurate you are in determining what you're producing.
Mm-hmm.
And with these robots, you're able to handle between 120 and 200 kilos at a time. Humans can't do that. Humans, even handling 20 kilos, get bad backs and what have you. So we changed to using robots to do that sort of work.
How does that actually, could you paint the picture of how that works?
Okay.
Does it pull it out of the ground and?
Well, it's already been, a lot of these things now are automated. So even the excavators and the trucks and what have you. They would mine the ore, take it to a point where it could be crushed, and then as it's being processed, you would need to be able to take samples. So the samples would be taken usually when one conveyor falls onto another, you have a falling stream, so you can run a scoop, and when it's a very large, it'll be a very large scoop if it's a large tonnage. And that then is then diverted into a laboratory where these robots can handle it and do different analytical tasks with it. So just the same as what lab technicians would have done in the past, but they can do this with a lot larger samples. So these robots are the car industry robots. So
the big claw arms,
the big arms. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
So we didn't have to invent the robots. The robots were already there, and robots. The actual robot itself, I think, has been quite stable and reliable for quite a while. Once they went from the hydraulic to the electric servo kind with encoders and the like. The bit that's changed is the end effectors. All of the AI that now you can work with the robots is the bit, and this AI that's continuing is where this change will occur.
What kind of AI is currently prevalent in mining?
Well, it's usually the visual, so you can you can be able to determine different types of ore, basically with different visual cameras and what have you on your robot. Yeah. So that's an example of AI.
Okay, so one of the things that big claw that you're talking about that pulls it off and tests it would like break it down more and say, all right, out of this 100 kilos, there's this much in this, which is a sample saying that every 100 kilos we can expect to get 2 kilos or 20 kilos
That's
of
correct.
Whatever you're looking for.
Yeah, it's a general. You break it down using an ISO standard.
What's that?
Sorry
for the stupid questions, but I just don't know.
Okay, so an ISO standard is an international standard, such as we have Australian standards, which are an AS standard, and so there's a recognised ISO standard for the sampling of iron ore, and so under that standard, it prescribes, this. I suppose the speed at which you take the sample, and then how you split that sample down. It also prescribes how you measure the moisture in the sample and how you, from a big sample, break it down to a small sample, which you can then take into an analyzer to understand the iron content.
Yeah, okay. And how does the moisture play a part in that?
Oh, yeah, the moisture is something that the client doesn't want to pay for. So if you're loading a ship, there's actually two things with moisture. If you're loading a ship and you've got 10% moisture, then if you've got 100,000 tonnes and 10,000 is moisture, you're only going to get paid for the 90, but you've got to pay the freight on the 100.
So is there drying out methods that you guys do? It's not too costly to do that.
Not so much drying out methods, but you just have to be careful in the way that you load ships, and you've got to make sure that you're using enough ore that doesn't hold a lot of moisture. There's another rule called the TML where you have to be able to, I suppose, tell the ship's captain the actual moisture level of that ore. There's an effect if there's too much moisture in ore in a big hold of a ship, which is called liquefaction, and it can actually cause the ship to turn over because the ore will liquefy at a certain level. So
and then just make everything really rocky.
Well, the ship will list and then it'll eventually fall over. So so basically, a ship's captain is he is guided by the insurance companies, and so if you want an insurance company to cover a ship for a shipment, you have to make sure that you have the right moisture level.
Yeah, okay.
And a lot of this comes back to the measurement that we do with the robots.
Wow. Because you just take into account this is the moisture levels, and then they may position it differently on a ship and so stuff like that.
Well, if the moisture level isn't right, the ship just doesn't sail. So you've got to be able.
What's that level? Is it like 20%, 10%?
Each different type of iron ore has a different moisture level, but
is that because it's down in the earth and different
Yes,
levels?
It can be to do with the way that it's been mined and in it and the moisture that it is in situ. Yes.
Yeah, okay. Because mining uses a lot of water, doesn't it, in terms of like spraying everything while you're cutting, like you would with cement? Or
No, not really. No, the a lot of the water in mining, in the actual mining part, is more to do with dust suppression.
yeah, some people just don't get dusted out.
Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. And what was like the journey? Because you've been in this director position for 5 years now, yeah?
Yeah.
How did you actually jump from being the strategist and engineer to a director?
Well, I think it just comes with experience, and I really enjoy being an engineer. I'm a chartered engineer, a fellow of Engineers Australia, and am part of Engineers Australia as a volunteer to sort of promote engineering to students and what have you. But
What's your sales pitch? What's your sales pitch to the kids?
Usually do your maths and your science, and there are so many different careers within engineering, and from that, I think the different things that I've done in mining, in engineering, get you to a stage where you understand enough about the mining of the ore, the processing of the ore, and what have you, and so therefore you end up in a role where you're actually at at the board level designing the mine, raising the money, sort of understanding, the total mine life, I suppose.
Yeah, okay. What is the mine life?
The mine life of what we've got in this project is multi-generational. Okay, so this is a very large resource sitting here in South Australia, I talk to my friends and with their little children, and I say, well, they'll be working for us for sure, and their kids will be working for us. So with what we've got, and you can only really declare based on what you've proven with your drilling, but with what we've mostly got 50 years.
Okay.
But with what there is in that area and the tenements that we have, which we haven't drilled, there's most probably triple or quadruple that in the mine life of this. So this ore resource will be mined for a very long time.
Yeah, okay. And did you previously work for one of the like environmental like surveying companies?
I worked for a consulting company.
Yeah.
Called Snowden.
Okay.
And my role in Snowden, I was part of their executive team, but I was looking after the technologies that the mining technologies, and Snowden had created some very good mining technologies and had implemented them in the big companies, so the Rio Tintos, the BHPs, and the Vales. So I spent a lot of time in a plane going to visit these different countries and work with these different companies.
Yeah, okay. And what kind of things did you learn working with so many different people from different places?
Well, that's a very good question, because I think that somebody that thinks that they can work with every country in the world, I think it'd be challenging. I find it very good and easy to get on with people in Brazil. I like their temperament, and I like the way that they do business.
How do they do business?
Well, it's a matter of creating a credibility and a friendship, and it's not as hard nosed, I think, as some of the other countries.
What do you mean by hard nosed?
I think there's a more genuine side to doing business. It's not just all about you've got to do it for half the price, and and what have you. They have a respect for a good technology, and they have an understanding of what that technology costs.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. And what are some of the other countries you've enjoyed working with?
Oh, look, I've still got a company based in China, so I have a private company that I own, and I have I have staff over there, and I enjoy going there and working with them. So in China, my private company, we work with the large mining companies doing the quality assurance on a lot of the equipment that's made for the mining companies.
Yeah. Okay.
And so, I've had a good relationship. I have a relationship with some the senior executives in the different Chinese companies.
How do you go about even establishing a company like that over there? Like, is it like Indonesia where you have to have someone native to that country as a citizen to do business with, and they own it, like you're part ownership and stuff like that?
No, but it's a good question. What I originally went to China because I was working with Rio Tinto, and I developed these robotic processes, and the Chinese were interested because what had happened in setting up these robotic processes for actually Rio Tinto and then BHP, it gave a surety of the assay, and so there's a term called load port final, which means that the final assay is trusted at the load port, and so at the load port in Australia, prior to having a load port final agreement, you would most probably only get paid between 80 and 90%, and then you would get paid the rest after an umpire at the other end, wherever the discharge port was, had tested to prove what the assay that you it was the same as yours. And so,
And is assay a different word for like the stuff that?
assay is the tested value of the ore.
Okay.
So we're so when you sell, especially when you sell iron ore, it comes under a contract that where you have a specific grade of your iron. So the spot price for iron is 62% Fe, and then an agreed price on the different deleterious elements, because it's the deleterious elements that will damage or create bad steel. So you have to have an agreement where you don't supply too much of that. If you do, it has to be extracted at the steel making end, and you have to pay a penalty.
Yeah. Okay. So it's essentially the grade of it.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. And what kind of things get in there that makes the bad steel? Is it like dirt? Is it other minerals?
It's mainly phosphorus, alumina, silica, sulfur, things like titanium. So depending upon, so if you've got a lot of sulfur, then you may need to, at the steel mill end, install like a sulfur wash plant, which is quite an expensive exercise. So depending upon what you're able to produce and supply, if you're low in these deleterious elements, you'll actually get paid a premium.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. And what also, could we just put your phone on the ground so it doesn't vibrate on here? Is that all right?
Yeah.
Thanks, mate. Shipping. In terms of dealing with like such huge quantities for shipping, what are like the most important lessons that you've learnt along that journey of dealing with all these different countries shipping huge quantities?
Well, basically, it does come back to this moisture level, and there was a TV show a long time ago, most probably, before your time. It was called The Ships of Shame, and it was an Australian show, and it sort of started to show when the standards were quite bad, and usually it was this moisture, which was, and so a number of ships were lost based on and so shipping and this TML is important for shipping. The one of the biggest things you have to be able to do is keep your loading process going, because you will usually sign a contract with a steel mill and they'll send a ship, and part of that contract is that when the ship arrives it has to get loaded, and if the loading isn't ready, then you start paying the rental of the ship and the salaries of the people on the ship. That's called demurrage.
That's expensive.
Yes, it is. So you have to keep your production ready for the ships that are arriving.
Yeah, okay.
Or then you're losing some of your profit margin by actually having to pay this penalty.
And is there any like issues that you've ever had with different payment systems across countries? Like Western Union, for example, if somebody just gives you a Western Union bank account, are you like, yeah, we trust that?
Look, that's really, I'd say I suppose there's been a lot of different issues with the different types of payment systems. What I'm more experienced at was the agreements. So there used to be a price struck, and that was a contract price, and then you supplied to that, and that was done after quite a protracted negotiation between the steel mills and the iron ore suppliers. But now we work with these indexes, on these spot price markets. And
is that similar to like how gold and silver has their spot price, or?
Well, yeah, it's an index like any other index, and the index fluctuates based on how the market is going. So there was a time when iron ore went to a very low price. Its index went low, and that was because there was an oversupply in the market. The interesting thing about what we will produce in our mine is that the market, being the world market, will never be able to get enough of what we have to produce. So we'll always be sold out, because our what we'll produce is a lot higher grade than the spot.
Yeah, okay, well that's great. And in terms of this huge worldwide discussion all about moving away from fossil fuels, what's your like take on it?
Well, yeah, I think we're lucky in the way that in South Australia, we have a lot of renewable power generation, and so we will need power, and we'll need a transmission line to our mine that will be supplied by this renewables, all of the wind generation, and the different solar projects that are going on.
Is that because they're the closest sources?
It also comes back to this, the ESG term that's getting around now, and so a steel mill needs to, you have the scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. So we are a scope 3 supplier to a steel mill. So if we have the right credentials, we should be able to demand a premium based on those credentials. So,
and one of those is that you're using the renewables.
Yeah.
And when you get those credentials, are you subsidised at all from the government for being higher in the grade, or is it just
no?
So why are these ESG targets so important then? Because I've heard this come up more and more, ESG targets.
Yeah.
And then I've heard some people say they're complete bullshit, and it's just like the government trying to force the market to change.
Look, I think for us, we've built, or we're designing this mine based on what are I suppose the most economical means, and so it's just a very nice coincidence that we have a renewable power source, which is part of that. One of the things that I think we've been able to look at is that if we are going to use the power transmission, then we will use it for nearly everything. So we can even put our mining trucks onto an electric catenary. So
they can be like recharged.
Well, like the Glenelg tram.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So you imagine a mining truck. So that happens in different parts of the world. So
wow.
So we can do those sort of things. We can take conveyors into the pit. They're all electric powered back to this source, and really reduce our requirement for diesel.
Yeah, okay. And in terms of renewables and what stacks up the best, what renewables like? Are you pretty knowledgeable about all the different types?
I've been around the world to have a look at different renewable power sources, and I drove up to Port Augusta the other day and I saw the molten salt. Port Augusta.
What's the molten salt?
Well, it's where all of there's an array of mirrors that point to a central point, that which is where they're melting like a salt compound, which then produces steam to generate power. So that is just as you come into Port Augusta.
Yeah, okay. And is that pretty good in terms of like cost and output of energy?
It is I think it works while the sun shines.
Yeah.
But the thing about having that is that the fact that it's heating this thing up means that there is still residual heat that allows the turbines to run when the sun isn't shining. So I like the look of that one. What we see with this this big battery that we've got in South Australia, and what I've seen in other parts of the world is it's a term called peak shaving. So you have this line that's showing the power use for a city different times of the day, but everybody gets home at 4:30 at night, turns the air conditioner on, boils the kettle and whatever, and you get this peak. And so different things, including batteries, but also there's these vanadium flow style batteries, which are a different type of technology. They can then come on to meet that demand, and that's, instead of the peak, you shave the peak off because you bring on more power. So that's what the peak shaving is about. So I've seen these, and I think some of these will be part of what will happen in the future.
Yeah, okay. So these big battery technology. What's that, Bill?
One of the things that I suppose in my life has been that my family have been in South Australia since 1949.
Yeah, okay.
And I got involved with a newspaper. I resurrected a newspaper when COVID hit. And after I did that, I started to study my family, and this newspaper was in Broken Hill. And
what's the newspaper called?
The Barra Daily Truth, which is the union-owned newspaper. Yeah. So the handy thing about me helping that newspaper was that because they're owned by the union, they couldn't approach the mining companies for money, whereas I'm a mining executive, and the mining executives are all basically a group of mates, and so I was able to approach BHP and Rio and others. And so that's another story. But the thing that I started to look into my family, and I recently found that at my great-great-grandfather level, one of his brothers had a son who actually was instrumental in starting the other newspaper in Broken Hill. And I only found that out recently, so I thought, well, there you go. Like, I just thought I'd help these guys. I had this interest in, well, actually, my interest in Broken Hill was the fact that the newspaper was an institution, had been there for 112 years, and you have a 70% retired mine worker sort of population there. And so a newspaper was part of their habit. And when you break a habit, you can create problems, including mental health problems. And I didn't think it was the right time to have a mental health problem when you just had a COVID problem coming. So,
Sure.
So that's why I helped them raise the money to resurrect that newspaper. And then when I found out about somebody a few generations ago that was part of my family, I thought, okay, well maybe that's part of why I got this interest in newspapers. It was sort of in the DNA, in the genes.
Got a bit of Murdoch in your blood.
Well, actually, that was Murdoch's newspaper that he started.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah, it was a Murdoch newspaper.
So. I mean, I feel like everything's a Murdoch newspaper now, though. Nearly everything.
Yeah.
Good on him. Done well for himself. That's for sure.
Yeah. So my family were saddlers.
Oh yeah.
And they came out, and if you can understand, the saddlery was obviously a fine artisan craft that before people started making cars, and they came out from England and established saddlery businesses in Adelaide.
Any saddles that have passed down through generations that?
Well, I haven't really found any of the saddles that they made yet, but I do know that there was a saddlery at 291 Unley Road, and that was our family saddlery. That would have been going, I suppose, just 1890s through to sometime early sort of 1900s. I know that obviously my family through my grandmother came to Broken Hill, which is why I was born in Broken Hill, but obviously two other family members before her had come to Broken Hill, but also that my grandmother's family had been in Burra. So,
Burra's beautiful.
Oh,
have you been to Burra Bure?
Nah, not really.
Dude, you need to go for a trip. It is the most quaint, beautiful town.
It's
gorgeous.
You have to look at the Cornish technologies. So the Cornish brought over technologies from what they knew, and so the way that the underground stopes and the woodwork was based on what they knew, but also these large steam lifts that they made. So if you see these,
what do you mean by steam lifts? I haven't seen. What are these steam lifts?
If you see, I think Kapunda, Burra and other places, you'll see a very large rock chimney.
Yeah, okay.
And that's actually how you get the steam to escape. But you create the steam in a boiler, and you're able to drive a cylinder, and that cylinder is connected to the buckets that are brought up, bring the ore up from underground.
Oh wow!
And there's actually a restored one in Burra. What you do is you go to Burra, and for a very small fee you buy the keys to Burra, and that allows you to go to these different places and open up these gates and go and have a look at the restored areas. But what I like about Burra is it's actually 5 towns, 5 hamlets, and so you've got so you've got these crazy Welsh names, and you've got Irish, and you've got other the Cornish and what have you. So
yeah, I've got heaps of Cornish in my blood.
Right. Yeah. Well, the other people that you mentioned before, I think, are all Cornish as well.
Yeah, and Scottish.
Yeah. Well, on my father's side, he immigrated from Scotland. So my middle name's Bruce. So
Bruce,
but I'm named after King Robert the Bruce. So
beautiful. There you go. Okay, and coming back to, that's very cool. I will go check that out, to be honest. That is a cool cultural experience. I didn't know we had that. Shout outs to Adelaide Set. Support local, go out to Burra, check that out.
Yeah.
In terms of ESG targets, what are some of the other ESG targets that are like a thing?
Look, I think that some of them. I think they are going towards the extreme, but really all we can do is work on a because of the way that this is set up, we have to be a good supplier under ESG to actually be able to deal with the steel mills that require us to be Scope 3.
Yeah, okay.
And really, the removal of diesel power in our whole mining chain is most probably the greatest way that we can do that. And so it's just the application of power from the renewables through a transmission line. The other way that I think that we are working on being economical in an ESG sense is that if you wanted to design a process plant to process this iron ore, you could do it in such a way that you actually wasted quite a lot of water, and that water would then go back into the ground or go into a tailings dam or whatever. But we intend to filter the stuff that doesn't come out as the concentrate comes out as the tailings, and we intend to filter that and reclaim the water.
So filter the wastewater and do what with it?
Well, then we can reuse it. So
for the same process?
For the same process.
Oh, yeah. Cool.
Yep.
Oh,
so that I think is another way of being a what do you call it, eco-friendly or just
doing the targets.
Yeah.
In terms of like transitioning to the renewables compared to the diesel, like what is, because obviously the threshold to make renewables the predominant factor in society will be when it's cheaper, right? And how does it stack up at the moment, the diesel generated power to the renewable generated power for something of that scale?
Well, something of that scale, because we, when you do the feasibility of a mining project, you have to check the price of both. And we thought that the diesel guys and the renewable guys had gone down to the pub and had a beer together because they both came up with the price about the same.
Oh,
and,
really?
Yeah.
Oh,
but
good.
But the thing is that of course, well, why would you use diesel if the other one's the same price? So that's and so from an economic sense, it also makes sense to go this way.
Yeah, okay. And I guess the only reason you would use diesel is if you had a bunch of equipment. Like, do you guys hire your equipment or do you tend to buy the equipment? Because if it's a 50-year mine, like, how does that work?
Well, and that's a very good question because you start up a mine in stages. And so when you're trying to get a mine off the ground, what you're trying to do is take a lot of money off your capital balance sheet. So and things like mining equipment, you can lease take a maintained lease. Now, if that gets you away, then you can gradually use your revenue to build up your capital to actually buy the equipment and remove. So everything that you remove from the maintained lease gives you a better profit on your OPEX.
Yeah, okay. Is that a startup strategy, or do you find that the real big dogs do the exact same thing? I mean, are you, because you guys are more like medium size, right?
Well, we will start small because we can see that for what we want to do, it will be easier to raise the capital we need to start small. We will get a decent margin on what we produce, and that will give us a capital balance to start to most probably make ourselves bigger, so expand, and we will start small, but we want to expand rapidly.
Yeah, okay. And what kind of capital is needed to start a mine?
Oh, look, it's most probably I can't really go into what our capital is.
Yeah, okay.
That's most probably something that is sort of market sensitive to us.
Okay.
But most people that understand mining would know that it's hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah, okay.
If you have a look at Gordon Toll and I were involved in the when Fortescue started, and I was with the mining consultants, and Gordon actually was the director of Fortescue. They needed $6 billion
Oh,
to get away, and they did that successfully.
that's huge.
So
How do you even go about getting this kind of money?
well, there are different places that you can get money from, and the money that they thought they were going to get money from steel mills, but they actually got it from junk bonds. So
Can you explain junk bonds to me?
well, this is just a bond in the US where you have to pay quite a large interest rate for.
Yeah.
But if you and one of the ways of doing it is you actually loan a lot more than you need because you have to service that loan. So as you get started, but the important thing is that if you raise money that way, getting rid of that debt is most probably foremost in your mind. The way of if we start smaller, we have still hundreds of millions of dollars to build this thing. We can create an agreement with some of the steel mills who really do want what we've got, and
these are Australian steel mills, international steel mills.
they're mainly in the steel industry. You have sophisticated steel making in the Middle East, North Africa, Japan, Korea, those sort of places, and then you have steel making in China, and the steel making in China they use lower grades like the stuff in Western Australia, but it's a little bit to do with Japan and Korea, but a lot to do with the Middle East and North Africa.
Because you have that higher grade.
We have the higher grade, and they have the gas and the fuels, whereas the Chinese have the coal, and so they can make steel with a more efficient way, and their steel making process requires the type of high grades that we produce. So part
of ESG as well, like in terms of being, hey, we're using less energy because coal uses more, and or is that a different metric?
When it comes to steel making, where the ESG counts is our magnetite concentrates, because magnetite is exothermic.
Sorry, you're going to have to explain what that means.
So basically it burns itself.
Yeah, okay.
So it's a fuel in itself.
Yeah.
And so, and because if we go back to the discussion on deleterious elements, because we don't have those high levels of deleterious elements, we're creating a very low emissions when it goes into the steel mill.
Yeah, okay.
And we're also being exothermic, creating some of the power of the steel mill. So we actually give the steel mill a greater efficiency and a very low emission from the stuff that we produce.
And is that and you need the gas technology to do that process? Is that how that works?
Well, the gas technologies, and what we are seeing is that these gas technologies may be overtaken by hydrogen technologies, hydrogen powered.
Question about that, because I had Ian on here, and I don't know if you listened to the Ian podcast, but he said hydrogen is a load of crock. He said it takes, what was it? He was saying like 7 units of energy to produce 1 unit of energy, and it's only held up by subsidies.
Well, I'd agree. He has a good view on. He likes any renewable as long as it isn't attracting a subsidy.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah. And I suppose we know that right now hydrogen isn't mature.
Okay.
I can remember when I had a I had an iPhone the size of a shoebox sort of thing.
Yeah.
Things change. So I also trust that Ian is a very smart scientist and knows what he's talking about. But yeah, I suppose we've just got to wait and see. But
Okay, but that looks like it's the sunrise industry
yes,
of steel mill powered.
yes, it is. It is. If that gets away, and I think, especially here in South Australia, they're also looking into that at great depth.
They're looking at that Whyalla, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. What about nuclear? What are your thoughts on nuclear?
I don't really have a problem with nuclear. I think that that it really is the solution for all of these people that are green that complain about everything else like coal and what have you. Well, then nuclear must be the solution.
Yeah. Okay. Well, heard that before. We've heard that a lot on this show, haven't we?
Yeah.
I want someone to come on and tell me why it's bad. So I keep hearing all these good things.
Yeah.
I don't know why it's not being done. People were just saying it's the economics, but then I have
Yeah.
experts like you and others come on and tell me that it's actually the balance sheet works out.
Well, yeah, it's I suppose it's one of these things where there's most probably things that we have to wait until a generation dies. You know what I mean? It's sort of something that does go back generations, and the other uses for uranium, but definitely as a power source, I can't see any problem with it.
Yeah, cool. What's the day in the life of being a CEO of mine? Like, what are you actually doing?
Well, basically, with our with this feasibility study that we're doing at the moment, I suppose for the time that I've been an executive leader of different groups, I find that if you can work with your people to empower them, but not harangue them, just
What do you mean harangue them?
well, if you want to go to your people and say do your work or whatever, I don't think that works. I think what you do is you say, that, you give them the confidence that they know what they're doing and that they will do the work, and you're just there when they may need some help with a decision. Right?
Okay.
They don't have to come to you for the decision. You're the executive that has the power to approve that decision, but you need to be able to work with them so that together you make that decision. And if you work with your people and allow them to and trust them to go and do that sort of thing, then what you're doing is, I suppose you call it a servant manager type role, where you are just trying to empower your people to do the work that they do well, and so it's sort of like it's not like, oh, I was wondering about this and you go, it's approved. No, it's more like we have a discussion about what is this the best way, and we come up with, yes, that's the solution. Then we both agree, and then we're able to get something done. So that is the way that I work with my senior staff.
And how do you cultivate that kind of culture among senior staff?
Well, I suppose you have to build that trust to start with. I think staff get to know you reasonably quickly because you're not jumping up and down and beating your chest and saying, why isn't this done? But you're sort of trying to empower them to when they have these queries that they can talk to you, and then together you can make these decisions. So that works well. So we have a number of different very skilled types within the organisation, but then we use different consultants. We have a very very strong focus on using Adelaide-based people or South Australian-based people. We don't really need to go out for very much outside of this state to to be able to do all of the feasibility work that we're doing.
Yeah, okay. Because we just have a lot of mining peoples here.
We don't have enough, but when you're in the market that I'm in, you eventually find them, and once you find good people, they usually know good people, and so so I think within the market, we're most probably using South Australia's best in a number of different disciplines, and they're doing that work very well for us.
Yeah, cool. And what kind of have you always worked with iron ore, or have you worked with a range of?
I worked in a very, very large copper mine in Bougainville in Papua New Guinea.
Yeah, okay.
Did 3 years up there. That was great. Boy from Broken Hill, where you get 9 inches a year rainfall, to Broken Hill to Bougainville, you get 9 inches a day.
Is that really its name, Bougainville?
Bougainville, yeah.
What?
So it was actually named after an explorer, and his name was Bougainville.
Where was he from? Was he from Australia? Was he a Bogan?
I think he was French.
Okay.
But the thing is, it's not named after an area that's full of bogans.
No, fair enough. Okay, so that's pretty cool. Going to Papua New Guinea.
Yeah.
What's it like there?
Well, I liked it. I learnt the language they speak, Melanesian Pidgin. So it wasn't a very hard language to learn, and I found that was, if you're prepared to learn the language, you would assimilate with these people, and so I had a responsibility in the mine. I had a large workforce working for me, and I was able to get on quite well with them. I ventured into the jungle. I'd have a few of these guys watching my back, but it was a great adventure up there. Those places are just islands that were formed by volcanoes, and so if you were driving to work from the ocean and you're going up to the mine every morning on a clear day, you would see an active volcano with the steam and the smoke coming out of it.
Real?
Yeah.
Whoa. What was that like?
Oh, very spectacular. Yeah.
Good sunsets?
Yes. Yeah. Definitely. Well, you so basically the weather pattern was that the day started dry, and then as it heated up, the clouds would form over the ocean and then come onto the land and then drop their water.
It rained like every day?
Every day.
Oh, my God.
If it didn't rain for a day, it'd be a drought, basically. But yeah.
And what was that mine?
It was called Bougainville Copper, so it was part of Rio Tinto.
It was the copper mining process like dramatically different from the kind of mining process we talked about today?
The mining process that we're doing has a milling process, and the copper has a milling process as well. Because generally what you're trying to do is you're trying to grind down your ore to liberate whatever chemicals or minerals from that ore, and away from the deleterious elements. And so with what we mine, it's, I think, simpler because you're just using a magnetic process after you've ground it to a size where the iron is liberated. With copper, you're using other like flotation processes to remove the copper, but you've got to grind it down first. So the grinding is similar, the separation is different.
Yeah, okay.
But definitely they had a big plant up there. Was quite big production, and I'm not a geologist, but what I understand about that place was that we were mining a volcano, which was a X number of hundreds of million years old, and that this volcano had more gold at the top, and so they mined the gold, created a good cash flow that allowed them to build the infrastructure. So then, when they got down to the copper, we were able to process.
Yeah, wow. Oh, good on them. Have you heard about what's happening in the Congo with all the cobalt?
Look, I've followed it a little bit, and I think those guys in the Congo have always had it from different groups from around the world that have come there to try to exploit them.
Yeah. Because I was listening on Joe Rogan, and he was saying, or the guy he was saying said there's heaps of child labour and stuff like that. And what it came down to was that nobody's taking responsibility for like who is like the one to improve the conditions.
Well, you'll see that there's a cobalt project just across from where we are up. So we're on the road to Broken Hill at a town called O'Leary. There's a cobalt project near us, and it's getting a lot of interest from Korea and places like that, because it's a little bit like blood diamonds, where you can buy diamonds that were mined in Australia, and you know that nobody was exploited. And I think it's the same with these rare earth minerals, where in Australia they can see that we're politically stable. We enjoy a very good work life, and we don't really exploit people. And so,
just a little bit, just a little bit. No, just because you said really. Okay, good. That's fair enough. And do we have a pretty large reserve or ground depository of cobalt?
My understanding of what they're looking at is that it's not as large as what it's not a multi-generational thing like what we've got, but they have well, I'd go back a step and describe the area around Broken Hill as being the most spectacular geological Disneyland in the world. The minerals that have come out of what is the line of lode, and I don't know whether Ian spoke about his involvement with CBH, but basically it was his hard work to prove up new resources that actually founded that new mining company.
Wow.
So
another thing to Ian's list of things.
So
every time we hear about this man, there's another thing he's done. Like, busy.
He's a busy man.
He's a busy man.
Absolutely. But yeah, so from this is another thing that's just occurring within that area, and I'm actually have some people writing a book about the pubs of Broken Hill.
Oh yeah,
and it's the pubs of Broken Hill and District, and so then you start to understand how the whole area, including Burra, was formed, because they were mining in Burra late 1840s sort of onwards, and Broken Hill was only founded in 1883, but there was a town near Broken Hill called Silverton where they were already mining there, and so there are, if you look at Broken Hill as the centre now, every road that goes out from Broken Hill has a pub at the end of it. And so we're writing a book about these pubs, and Broken Hill had 70 pubs.
70
pubs.
Boys like their beers, didn't they?
Oh, well, maybe they didn't trust the water back then, Maybe that's what they had to do. But of these 70 pubs, 38 pubs were built in 1885. The town was founded in 1883, and there were some pubs. Prior to Broken Hill, there was Silverton. There were a dozen pubs out at Silverton. And so some of the pubs in Silverton were brought in on jinkers.
What's a jinker?
Well, a jinker is like a very large flat trailer that you put it underneath a pub and jack it up, and then you pull it with bullocks. And
these are stone pubs.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So they'll be stone, or they'll be wood and iron with some parts of stone.
Okay.
And they would bring these to different, and so there are stories around Broken Hill about a pub in this direction being taken outside of Broken Hill to another place outside of Broken Hill, because that area they'd finished mining and this area they were going to start. So wherever there was a mine, there was a pub.
Who needs a prefab when you can just drag the other pub?
Well, I don't think a prefab was really thought of back then.
Well, definitely not.
But so 1885 was the year that BHP was listed, and I have a lot of respect for Charles Rasp and his history, and he was the guy that actually decided to peg this, what was the Broken Hill. The guys in Silverton knew that there was this thing called the Broken Hill. They just called it over there's the Broken Hill because it's a hill that looks like it's broken. This is this massive outcrop of sulfides and what have you. But he had a business education, and he came out from Europe, and so he came out like a lot of people for the clear air. They were coming out of these smoggy countries and coming into our wide land and the clear air, and he came out and he thought, well, there's something going on here. So he and a group from the station he was working on pegged it, and because he was smart and he understood business, that's why he was behind the listing of BHP. So 1885, 38 pubs were built, and it got up to 70, and the last pub in Broken Hill till this day was built in 1900.
Wow.
So some of the pubs have been refurbished and quite well. There's one pub, there's a friend of mine that owns a pub in the centre of town that he spent a lot of money to refurbish it, and it's a very grand building, and he's brought it back to life. But no new pubs, not for 123 years.
I kind of love that though.
Yeah,
I love history and like the heritage of place. I think it's like a shame that we're knocking down, like even on North Terrace there was some beautiful buildings that just got knocked down, and there's nothing grand there now.
Well, there's the Adelaide Club and the Lady Adelaide Club.
What I mean is in those particular locations, not the street in general. The street in general is divine.
Yeah.
But I mean, like even the baths, where the car park is between the Benithan Hall and the law building. There used to be these huge baths, or on the corner of Pulteney and Rundle, where the car park is. There used to be this huge divine building.
Yeah,
and it's just demolished.
Yeah, look, there are some good books out about what Adelaide looked like, and I also believe that some of Adelaide was built on Broken Hill money, because Broken Hill was the booming city of Australia back at that stage. I think Burra had made some money out of Burra. The guy behind Burra was a Morphett, so you see everything.
What's now, a Morphett?
You see Morphett everywhere, but
oh right, that's the last name.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So, but yeah, look, I believe that we need to be responsible in recording history.
Definitely, else we'll forget it.
I was looking at a thing on Facebook the other day, and these people were talking about it, and they were saying, well, this in 1910, this is in Broken Hill, this was a store that somebody's taken over, and it had the sign, so they painted over the sign, and so all of that history is gone, but this book company that I own is writing this book about pubs. It's writing the history of the CWA in Broken Hill, so that's pretty much completed. We're about to get that printed.
Wait, did you say you have a book company?
Yes. So this pub book is being written by some people that I know in Broken Hill. I own the book company.
Like a publisher or like the
we are the publisher, and we use a South Australian book publishing house. I was actually there today. It's part of the day in the life, and I'm a COO, not a CEO. So the chief operating officer. But I went and saw those guys today because they will produce the books. I've already produced a couple of books, and but this year we'll produce another 3.
Awesome.
and they're all about recording the history in Broken Hill. And right now, there's a generation that are in their 70s and 80s, and they're living longer, and they're all coming together on these big Facebook groups, and they're yearning for the history of as they grew up. And so we're writing some of the books about that, and I share the royalties of the books with the people that write the books. And so it's all just to be able to have this to record this history.
Good on you. That is very important.
Yeah.
Good on you. That's a cool. So how did that begin? You just had a passion for it, and you were like, "Let me do it."
Yeah, I thought the historians of Broken Hill needed a hand. Historian is an important part, and I don't. They just don't have the time to do what I'm doing, and this pub book has been very well researched. I mean, really well researched. Like, we have the list of licensees of every pub from when it started.
Wow, what records!
But I think now when you write a book, you'll write a book which is the story of these pubs. Instead of filling it up with all these lists of licensees, you stick that into a database on the website, which has some sort of QR code, and you can buy the book and you can go and have a look, because we've also interviewed all of the old publicans. So there are publicans in Broken Hill that have been publicans for 40 years. There's a guy sitting at the front bar of the Junction since 1964, leaning on the front bar of the Junction. He's kept it up, and he's told me that he could have bought the pub 3 times the money he's given them, sitting there. So he's been there since 1964.
Yeah,
right?
Incredible.
So we interviewed him.
Yeah,
because he's been to every pub in Broken Hill playing darts. So we have a video, and so those things can go onto the website. You buy the book, you can watch all of these stories, and so so we've interviewed. I think we've got about 8 of the long-term publicans in Broken Hill, and we've sort of recorded them for posterity.
I think it'd be rude not to ask what's your favourite beer.
Look,
Too political?
No. Well, Broken Hill was brought up on West End.
Yeah, okay.
I am friends with Tim Cooper.
Yeah,
and I do love both the pale ale and the sparkling, the Coopers.
they're great.
But West End, so West End actually owned a lot of these pubs in Broken Hill and had its own breweries in Broken Hill.
Oh wow!
So not only was it South Australian, but it was definitely a Broken Hill beer. But yeah.
So the West End, West End, the tried and true.
Yes,
the old Westie.
Yeah, definitely.
Good stuff. Is there any other little or secret companies that you care to disclose right now? What other cool projects are you doing?
Look, I think if I talked a little bit about my company in China, what you've got to understand that there's QA, and then there's what I call executive QA or quality assurance. And so quality assurance is you have an agent in Australia and he says, I've got QA people in China and we're gonna build this thing for you and blah blah blah. But the big mining company they're working for also wants somebody to watch their QA people. And so if you wanted to know so one story, so we're building longwall underground coal mining equipment, which is a device where you have these very large, what they're called roof supports, but they look like a big accelerator pedal. They're like this. Each one of them is about 67 tonne, right? And so one of these fits onto the back of a semi-trailer. And so,
Wild.
and I think, 2021, we built about 500 of them for the Queensland coal mines, and we worked on other parts of the longwall drivetrain, the way that the longwall works, and so the roof supports is a very important part of it. And my guys, not only are we watching the quality of the weld and the way these things are being manufactured, but when they're finished and they've got this global mining company's name on the side of it, they're craned onto the back of this truck and tied down with nothing more than small ropes, and all you can imagine is some poor Chinaman on a bicycle. This truck comes around the corner and the thing slides off and squashes him, and this global mining company's name is on the piece of equipment, and so we over and above all of the other QA, we keep an eye on making sure that everything goes out safely from the Beijing factory to get to the Tianjin port. And so that's one of the stories. And another one is
when that happened.
Well, they tried to make it happen. Every truck driver is different. They want to try and cut corners. They want to get away. They want to make their bonus. And so we just wouldn't let this guy leave. You have to have very large chains with ratchets to hold these huge pieces of equipment on the back of these semi-trailers. So
because probably in China wouldn't be one China man that
squishing. You might be squishing.
Squish 20.
Yeah. And like we look at things like we make sure that like when they leave the factory and they're sitting at the port, if they're stored in certain areas, they can get, I wouldn't call it infested, but you'll get a lot of, say, snails or something like that. Now, if that happens, then they have to add an extra fumigation when they come to Australia. So keeping an eye on those sort of things, is over and above the normal sort of QA. So, we got...
are these all Chinese staff as well? You have to import staff, or how's that work?
We did a lot of this during COVID. Nobody was allowed into China. So luckily, I've had Chinese staff. The lady that runs my business in China has worked for me for, this will be her 11th year working for me. And she manages these guys, and the guys that we use on contract are ex-mining executives from Australia that are Chinese that have decided to go back and live in China. So they're very, very well versed, very good at communicating, very good at negotiating. And so we're able to make our way into these factories and talk to the leaders in the factories. We're not down on the shop floor. We keep an eye. So that business is an interesting business. I just thought I'd share a couple of stories out of actually what you do with that. I'm sort of a shareholder of a few other businesses. We have a business that the guy that created it came to me, and I sort of gave him the funds to get it off the ground. He had the same sort of outlook that I did, is that we need to be able to have all of the data on mining oil and gas companies that are listed. What we're actually looking for is the data on directors and what they actually own, what sort of skin in the game they've got. But and so this business is set up with the analysts that do all this work live in the Philippines, but they've been trained by this group, and so they take every ASX release from each of these companies and take the data out of the release and put it into a database, and then we sell these databases. So the database is an online database where you can run data with algorithms to look at trends and what have you. And so this data is very valuable for brokers. So I could see the merits in getting involved in that business, and it's starting to really get some legs now.
And is that international directors, like across the whole world, or is it country specific?
It's stock exchange specific. So the mining stock exchanges of the world are mainly London, Toronto, and Australia. And so we're loading the data in into these databases from there. And so, people can subscribe and get what they want out of that. But
yeah, okay. What do you think of the director ID thing that's been created from the Australian government?
Look, I haven't got a problem with it. I've got a director ID. I'm a member of the company directors in Australia. I'm a trained company director from company directors, so I've done all of the governance training. Something like that I think is good because there's not everything in Australia that is Australia wide. There's mostly that and the railway. Look at driver's license. There are so many things. And for a few years I sat on what was called the National Engineering Registration Board, and we were trying to get an audience with what back then was called COAG to nationalise engineering registration, but it was very hard because the states liked getting the revenue out of registering, registering an engineer in each state. So,
yes.
But that's a bit like driver's licenses and other things. It's based on the power of the states and what they've got there. So, getting back to directors, there are, but when you do your director training, you get some of the worst examples, in governance and actually criminals that have manipulated businesses and done things wrong.
In what kind of ways?
Generally, usually insider trading or willfully trading insolvent. Doing things outside of what you're allowed to do as a director.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
Yeah,
cool.
Yep.
Beauty. All right. I think it's been a great chat. Is there anything else you'd like to talk about before we wrap up?
I suppose my forefathers in Australia, being saddlers, were involved with the explorers. And so the main explorer that they were involved with was Stuart, who was an explorer with Sturt, before him. And so
where did they explore?
Well,
bits?
Stuart, I think walked the length and breadth of Australia. Sturt obviously was a captain in the English army and was out here exploring, in the 40s, and so that was handed down to me by my great grandfather and I, who lived until he was 97, and so our family name, at the great-great-grandfather level, one of my great-great-grandfather's brothers started the Glasscock nursery business in South Australia. Whereas in my line of the family, they've nearly all been saddlers until cars came along.
There you go. I find it wild that horses were our mode of transport for 5,000 plus years.
Yeah.
We got cars and we're like, see you later, horses.
Yeah.
Yeah. I understand why we did it because obviously a car is, it's a car, it's very efficient. But what a relationship we've just let go of.
Yes. Yeah. No, definitely. I'm proud of these old guys and what they got up to, and they all lived to ripe old age. And so the first guy that came here in 1849, there's a family plot in the old Wollonga cemetery because he lived in Wollonga for a long time, and there's stories about him that you can pick up on Trove about who's the longest living resident of Wollonga and stuff like that.
I love Wollonga. It's a beautiful area.
Yeah, no, well, definitely. It's part of the way that you understand that the different countries that emigrated to Australia went to different parts. and so we have the what became the Barossa and with the others, and but down that way, obviously, were these English settlers. But yeah, I think the only other thing that I suppose I should talk about is in Western Australia for about the last 5 years, I've been the chair of a thing called the Autism Academy for Software Quality Assurance. And it was started by a previous chair, and I came in as part of the board, and then I became the deputy chair, and then I became the chair. And what we found was obviously there is a larger prevalence of people on the spectrum, and that this so autism in 1975 in the Western world was about 1 in 2,500 people. It's about 1 in 60 now.
Wow.
So
1 in 60.
Yeah,
it's hectic.
And so we're at Curtin University in Western Australia, and so we study autism. We study a number of like the guide dogs for autistic people, and a lot of different helpful apps, and we also study the causes, which isn't proven.
What are the causes that are not proven?
Well, we don't know. We don't know what.
What are the contenders of causation?
Genetically modified food, maybe diet.
Yeah, okay. I think it's causing a lot of issues. That one.
Yeah, it's a big one.
It is a big one.
Yeah. So, what we found is that so people on the spectrum are a different type of brilliant. Okay, and so if you understand that you've just got to make their environment acceptable for them, they actually can perform brilliantly and a lot better than. So we would call them neurodiverse, and we would call non-neurodiverse neurotypical. And so what we found is that train them how to code, then they're actually very good at finding bugs in code. And so that's what this software quality assurance is all about. And and so we would bring these, we sort of work on kids once they've finished primary school, and they can come in on the weekend to the university, and we would be teaching them the code. Now, if you start to learn how to code, you can then undertake an international testing qualification in coding, and that actually is a different path into university or TAFE, because you might be struggling at school because you're neurodiverse and you're just not tuning in properly.
Yeah.
Whereas if you put your earphones on, you've got your most probably your curtains in your room, and you start coding.
Yeah,
These guys work so hard that you've actually got to give them some parameters, like start at 8, have a break at 10, and what have you, or else they'll just keep working because they're very, very hardworking and
like
very smart.
Single track minded.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And so they're very good at picking up these code bugs, and doesn't matter. Even today's iPhone doesn't matter. They've all got bugs.
Sorry to do this.
Yeah.
Have you seen ChatGPT?
No.
Oh mate, this might render all that gone.
Right.
As a program.
Okay.
Because it's an AI as a part of OpenAI, which is a parent company that has a bunch of AIs.
Right.
And what it is like better than Google.
Right.
In the sense that you could say, write me in JavaScript the software to be able to anything, something about data entry, make an app that tells people what the best fitness routines are.
Yep.
And it will write the code instantly. And you can also, and I've been speaking to Will Bishop, and he told me he's an app developer, check him out. He's a young kid. He's like 20. He's killing it. And he was saying, look, it's not the best at necessarily writing the code because it's buggy, but it is really good at putting code in there and then finding all the bugs.
Right, okay. Well, that's very good. Where I'm going with this is that I've been talking to the unis here about, and the unis in Western Australia will help, but I'm in South Australia most of the time, so that we may as well have the same thing here.
Yeah, okay.
And so, in the West we have all of the big mining companies, the process is that you eventually work with these guys and you can get them cadetships, and they can, and so BHP has a very big program now of neurodiverse people doing a lot of handy stuff. The banks over there have these people in the back rooms doing a lot of the cyber security and that. I've been talking to the Vice Chancellor of the UniSA and starting to build something here. It's in its infancy, but we have a successful sort of model to build on, and so I really do. I have helped a few people here. I've helped some adults actually. I have talked to different unis about understanding how these people need to learn, and that's been quite successful.
How do they need to learn? Like, what works? What doesn't work?
So the example that I'll give you is with the actual online study is not a problem for these people. They will. They'll have their headphones. They'll have their curtains. They'll be able to do that study. But
so is it like sensory deprivation that they need?
No, it's just they are affected by noise and other activities going on around them. So they, it's basically they have to be in their own zone.
Yeah. When
they go to the university, firstly, doing tutorials, if they have to, at the end of the tutorial, do a questionnaire, it isn't sort of built into their wiring to just listen and then answer the question. So I went and negotiated with the unis and said, well, listen, he can give him 24 hours and he can record it on his phone, the shoot, and then see how it goes. And, of course, that worked. And he'd get all his questionnaires right because he had 24 hours and he was able to form it in his mind as to what the answers were. When it came to the prac, it was the same thing where neurodiverse people are quite shy and they don't mingle or mix in with other people too easily. And so doing a practical in a team was for this guy quite onerous. So I talked to the uni about, again, if he could tape it, and what I did is I matched him up with an engineer in a big engineering firm to go and unscrabble the practical with him in his own time afterwards. And so that guy went from giving up to getting honours just because we were able to teach the surroundings to him.
Yeah, okay.
The surroundings being the university and all of the support that he needed.
Interesting. I wonder what the future of all that is if we are having a 1 in 6 of these neurally divergent different
I think right now, I think it's about 1 in 63 at the moment. And well, look, it's something to ponder, isn't it? Like,
it's like, what's the world like if that is like that's very tailored, right? That's like a very tailored way to learn, which that's probably a good thing is that we have more tailored learning. But in terms of scaling education, it seems like it's really hard.
Well, yeah, but what's going to happen to the world? What's going to happen to this number? Is it what we're eating?
Yeah. Is
You
it
know?
what we're eating? I mean, obviously we've heard the age old, it's the vaccines, it's the aluminium in the vaccine theory. And look, I don't know. I'm not a scientist, but
Well, that's right. I'm not educated to understand that one, but I do. I just have the experience with this to know that what works, and so I just think that everybody deserves to have a decent life, and you set it up right for these people, and they really shine.
that's cool. That's good to know.
Yeah.
No, beautiful. I've had a bit of experience with my life with some people with different versions of
Yeah.
on the spectrum.
Yeah, no, definitely. There's no, it's quite a broad spectrum.
It is.
And I think, with my involvement with this mining company, even, like we were talking to the native title people the other day, and even if they've got people that are on the spectrum or people that are disabled, there will be roles for them in our mining company.
That's
there
good.
will be, we will be quite inclusive in, wide ranging. Like when we start this mine, we're going to need a lot of people, so we're going to have to spend a lot of money on training, and also facilitating for those that have some sort of disability, so that they have some sort of meaningful work with us.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, very cool. Very cool. Well, thank you very much, Robert.
No worries.
It's been a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your knowledge.
Yep.
I hope the people listening enjoy this.
Yes.
And please like, share, comment. If you have any questions for any of these people, throw them through, and we might be able to ask them and get back to you another time.
Yeah, for sure. Cheers.
Beautiful. Thank you.